Hey, welcome back to our Art World family. Today we're coming to you from the NAHMAD Contemporary Gallery, 980 Madison Avenue, and we've got a special edition because we're going to be looking at an exhibition by Jean-Michel Basquiat titled Words Are All We Have, curated by Dieter Burkhardt. Well, I'm going to splice in a photograph of the wall text that explains the premise of this exhibition. And there's a couple of things I'd point out. One of them is that they're trying to link a lot of Basquiat's text work with conceptual art, which may or may not be a correct reading. And also that a lot of this was inspired by an exhibition that we covered at the Brooklyn Museum, The Unknown Notebooks. Well, we're going to start off looking at this piece, CPRKR, and this is acrylic and oil stick on a tied wooden structure. And this piece is a memorial to Charlie Parker, who was one of Basquiat's idols, and it also talks about him dying at the Stanhope Hotel. We've got a nice wall. These are all canvases about the same size. I think they're approximately 7-foot squares. And the first three of them are just raw canvas. This is titled Natives Carrying Things, and this is just straight oil stick on unprimed cotton duck. And the interesting thing about this is that people like Joe Bradley are trying to create something like that. These two other pieces are titled New and Fake. These are from 1983, and they're talking about Leonardo da Vinci. One of the things that I like about this show, and sort of the whole question of the text and the drawing and that, is that Basquiat is using these panels, these canvases, basically almost like pages of a notebook. And that's pretty audacious and pretty bold. You know, he goes in, does these works, and doesn't really worry about it a lot. This piece is titled Thesis, and it's also from 1983, and I'll just read a little bit of the wall text. In Thesis, the visceral red paint that has been generously applied to the surface contrasts with fragmented phrases and erratically appearing words. Mona Lisa falling the stairs down, Trojan horse, a good painting, etc. These are all from the lyrics that Basquiat produced with his 1979-1980 band Gray, and they were performed at the Mud Club. And these were crafted first through music. These bemusing riddles that confound and intrigue continue to exist through his painting. I just like the kind of the raw approach to this, and also, like I say, I think that he was more of a poet than he was a conceptual artist. Well, I like this piece. It kind of made me think of Philip Guston a little bit, and that little shot of blue in the middle is nice. And here again we've got his, almost like a chant, Moses, 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 and the urgent paint handling and splattering, and that shot of blue. And again, this is staff into serpent, leprosy trick, water into blood. Now, there was one large piece that they didn't let me photograph, and so we're going to have to skip over that. This is a theme that Jean-Michel used a lot, which was the famous black athletes. And these two pieces are nice, and they're kind of interesting because he painted them. He stretched the canvas over pallets, the old loading pallets. And there's a real, what a bunch of painters came along later and started using for casual painting. He was doing this back in the early 80s. I believe these are from 82 or 83. Now, I actually bumped into Jean-Michel once or twice. I used to work at Utrecht, the art store. And about closing time, he had a group of Rastafarians that he worked with, and they would come in and sort of swoop through and pick up a couple $1,000 worth of paints and brushes and canvases. And they would also pick up things around the neighborhood, take them back to the studio, and he would paint on them. I think they probably found that piece. This piece is titled Low Boy in Junkie Paradise, 1983. Perceiving himself not as a painter but as a writer of tablets, lists, and vocabulary books, Basquiat created Discography 2 and Low Boy in Junkie Paradise as monumental lists celebrating the icons he admired. And it's nice because he's kind of combining his anatomy and skeletal structures with kind of what you have to move and which fingers you would push the different notes on the saxophone with. Well, I like this, the monochrome black with just the white text. This is just lists, and I think this probably will be the most exemplary piece for what they're trying to prove with the show. This is his idols, his jazz personas, and it's actually kind of ironic that a lot of these jazz players and Jean-Michel's final tragic ending sort of relate to each other. But it's nice to see the way that he's able to kind of personalize this and put a certain amount of expression in there and still keep a nice textual approach. Well, this piece is titled 5 Fish Species, 1983, acrylic and oil stick on canvas mounted on wood supports. And I'll just read a little bit from the wall text. In this triptych, Basquiat has erected a rather menacing monument to Beat Generation author William S. Burroughs, one of his greatest inspirations. The left and right panels refer to the night of September 6, 1951, when Burroughs accidentally shot his wife, Joan Vollmer, in the head in a game of William Tell. Basquiat commodifies and brands the bullet that killed Vollmer, marking it with the copyright symbol. Well, this is interesting because I know that when I made deliveries to Jean-Michel's studio, he was just maybe 5 or 6 blocks away from where William Burroughs lived in what he called the bunker, which was at 222 Bowery in what was an old YMCA building there. I think another nice thing about this piece is the way that he contrasts the raw canvas, kind of the beige color of that, against gesso primed canvases in the 2 right-hand panels. I think it's interesting to note the way that Basquiat made his stretchers. He didn't bother with joining them with an angle or anything. He just sort of overlapped the boards and then would stretch the canvas over there almost like someone stretching a hide. This piece is untitled, Hand Anatomy, 1982, acrylic, oil stick, and paper collage on canvas mounted on tied wood supports. In Untitled Hand Anatomy, Basquiat diagrams the complexities of the human hand. Having studied diagrams from the classic medical textbook Gray's Anatomy as a young boy, Basquiat may be referring to chapter 4 of the book, which covers myology, the scientific study of muscles, listing muscles that enable the hand to move, such as the abductor digiti, minimi flexor, and the flexor digiti minimi brevis. Basquiat thereby examines the foundations of the physical functioning that allows him to create the work. This is an interesting piece. You can see that he's gone to just regular stretched canvas, but he's got a lot more layered paint underneath there. This is not just raw canvas. He's spent a lot of time building up a surface. He's got splashes and drips and glazes and things, but he always keeps his kind of notation practice going. What price, Porky? I think this relates a lot to Warner Brothers cartoons. And I guess he would probably keep a little notebook with him. I like the way that they've got the black swatch going down the middle of this, dividing the two halves. There's also always a sense of urgency in Basquiat's handling of his materials, and he was a great colorist. And I think in a lot of ways he was working on these very fast, and he didn't have time to overthink things, and you can just see that he had a natural graphic sense and a wonderful coloristic sense. This is one of the more unusual pieces in the show. This piece, I think it's titled Masonic Lodge, and I love the blue monochrome, but if you look closely you can see that there's a lot of pedimenti. There's a lot of stuff coming through. He had another canvas that he painted over, featuring anatomical depictions characteristic of many of Basquiat's most important works. Masonic Lodge is a mesmerizing map of the human skull, the building blocks of which are invoked by the title's reference to masonry. Cradling the vital organ that is the brain, the complex architecture of the skull is broken down by Basquiat into such constitutive parts as the patellabone, the ramus, and the occipital. Basquiat's perception of himself as a writer of lists and tablets is particularly poignant in this work, which evokes the illustrations of a traditional textbook. Unlike mere illustrations, however, Masonic Lodge is imbued with Basquiat's subjective comprehensions of anatomy. Well, this is a nice wall of paintings. This piece, Oreo, is actually from 1987, the year before Jean-Michel died. And, well, they don't mention this fact in the wall label, but Oreo was kind of a slang term for someone who was black on the outside and white on the inside. And again, we've got here Universal. Jean-Michel's kind of picking a logo that everyone sees all the time, every day, and giving it his own personal twist. And there's a lot of pedimenti things under the surface. Some people consider this erasure, you know, when he scratches through his letters or paints over something. I actually consider it canceling something. This is whole livery, also pretty simple, just a line of text with his copyright symbol on there. And he's wonderful with his little kind of shots of color here and there, just enough to really highlight things and make for a nice combination. This almost looks like a little sign that I would see propped up out in the streets somewhere in Brooklyn. 59-cent special. And it also makes me think of some of the early Andy Warhols when he was just getting started on pop. This is Untitled from 1987, acrylic and oil stick on canvas. And again, we pretty much got a monochrome, and this is also stretched over loading pallets. This one is titled Peruvian Made. Composed of paneling in a found wooden box, Peruvian Made does not tap into a singular concern of Basquiat's, but encapsulates a myriad of potential meanings. Basquiat may be engaging with topics such as commerce, commodities, and the commodification of objects, including works of art themselves and tendencies within the art market, irrespective of the meaning of the works. This is the last piece we're going to look at. This is titled Repel Ghosts. And I just had a kind of a quick feeling when I was looking at this. It reminds me of Marcel Duchamp piece where he did a little door and covered it with leather. James Combe